the signal and the doorstep. A united neural corpus. Mathematical evidence from 32,356 verses. Hearts2Fathers Publishing Royal Levitical Priesthood Ministry. Guide verse. Mark 13, verse 29. Part 1. The doorstep. So in the same way, when you will see these things come to pass, know that it is near, even at the doorsteps. That is Mark chapter 13, verse 29, from the Urim Thummim version. Today, that verse was drawn at random to guide this presentation. And what it tells us is simple but profound. When you see the evidence, you will know. It is near. It is at the doorstep, not behind some distant wall, not in the next century. At the doorstep. What I want to show you today is evidence, not opinion, not theology crafted around tradition. Evidence that can be measured, tested, and verified by anyone willing to look. For over 30 years, I have been translating scripture from the original Hebrew and Greek. 119 published volumes. And what I discovered along the way changed everything I thought I understood about how the Bible actually works. The Bible is not simply a collection of 66 books written by different people over different centuries. It is a unified signal, a single coherent mathematical structure. And I can prove it. Part 2, the corpus. The Urim Thummim version, which I will call the UTV, is a complete biblical translation built directly from the Masoretic Hebrew text and the original Greek. It includes the 66 books of the standard Protestant canon, plus the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, because these texts were quoted by the apostles and preserved in the earliest manuscript traditions. The reconciled corpus that we tested today contains exactly 32,356 verses across 52 books, 826,000 words. Every single verse has been tagged with dominion markers, thematic identifiers, and cross-referential signals. Now here is where the mathematics begin. When we tag every verse for 11 distinct thematic dimensions, something extraordinary emerges. 75.3% of all verses in the corpus carry at least one active marker. Nearly half, 46.3%, carry two or more markers simultaneously. Almost 1 in 4 verses, 22.9%, carry 3 or more markers firing at the same time. That is not what you would expect from a random collection of ancient documents. That is a network. That is a neural corpus. Part 3. The neural architecture. Let me explain what I mean by a neural corpus, because this is the mathematical heart of the discovery. In artificial intelligence, a neural network consists of nodes connected by edges. Each node processes information. Each edge carries a signal between nodes. The strength of the network depends on how densely and coherently those connections are wired. The UTV corpus operates identically. 32,356 verses function as nodes. 51,128 marker instances function as edges. 11 unique marker dimensions serve as the signal channels. The average verse connects to 1.58 other thematic dimensions simultaneously. And the coherence of this network, measured by cosine similarity across all 52 books, is 86%. Let that number sink in. 86% coherence across 52 books written by dozens of authors over more than 1,000 years. That means if you take any two books in the corpus, Genesis and Revelation, Exodus and Hebrews, Enoch and Romans, their thematic marker profiles overlap by 86% on average. The signal is the same. The pattern is the same. The architecture is unified. We also measured what we call gradient smoothness, which tracks whether the dominion intensity level changes gradually or chaotically from verse to verse. The result was 78.3% smooth transitions. The corpus does not spike and crash randomly. It builds, sustains, and resolves its themes the way a symphony builds, sustains, and resolves its movements. These are not the characteristics of a library. These are the characteristics of a single mind expressed through many hands. Part 4. The signal test. Now comes the comparison test. We took the entire UTV corpus and measured its non-random index, the NRI, against simulated renderings of 3 major English translations: the King James Version, the English Standard Version, and the New International Version. The NRI measures 4 things: divine name precision, which scores how accurately the text preserves the original Hebrew and Greek names for the Almighty. Dominion vocabulary, which scores how precisely the text renders terms of authority, inheritance, and priesthood. Technical clarity, which scores whether the text preserves specialized theological and cosmological terminology. And semantic fidelity, which scores whether nuanced meaning is retained or flattened into generic language. The results were decisive. The UTV scored 22.59 out of 100. The King James scored 12.43. The English Standard Version scored 12.32. The New International Version scored 12.22. The UTV carries a 10-point signal advantage over every major English translation. And the primary driver is divine name precision. When Elohim becomes God, when YHWH becomes the Lord, when Joshua becomes Jesus, you lose signal. You lose specificity. You lose the ability of the text to identify itself across books, across centuries, across testaments. The divine names are the carrier frequency. Remove them, and you reduce the coherence of the entire network. Part 5. The Bootstrap Proof. To verify this was not a fluke, we ran a Monte Carlo bootstrap analysis. 1,000 iterations. Each iteration randomly sampled 50 verses from the corpus and computed the NRI. The mean score across 1,000 random samples was 22.4, with a standard deviation of 4.32. The 95th percentile was 29.67. The 99th percentile was 32.46. What this means is that no matter where you reach into this corpus, no matter which 50 verses you pull, the signal is there. It is stable. It is consistent. It does not depend on cherry picking. It does not depend on which book you sample from. The Cross-Genre Unity Index, measuring signal consistency across law, narrative, wisdom, prophecy, gospel, epistle, and apocalyptic literature, came in at 76.6%. Part 6. The Dominion Triad. Within the marker system, the most significant convergence occurs when three specific dimensions fire simultaneously: identity, inheritance, and priesthood. We call this the Dominion Triad. 378 verses in the corpus achieve full triad convergence. That is 1.17% of the total. These verses are not clustered in one book or one testament. They span Genesis through Revelation and include Enoch. The very first triad convergence appears in Genesis, where Abram builds an altar to YHWH and calls upon the name. The pattern continues through the Exodus covenant declaration. You will be to me a kingdom of priests and a sacred nation. It threads through the Psalms, through Isaiah, through Hebrews, and arrives at Revelation chapter 1, where Joshua Messiah is named the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. Identity, inheritance, priesthood, one signal, 52 books, 378 convergence points, one author behind every hand that held the pen. Part 7. At the doorstep. Mark 13:29 says, "Know that it is near, even at the doorsteps." The temporal marker on that verse flags it as an eschatological proximity signal, and the neighborhood analysis confirms it. Within 5 verses in either direction, 55% of all verses carry the temporal marker. 36% carry the identity marker. 36% carry the governance marker. The text is telling you the time of recognizing who you are, whose you are, and what is coming is concentrated right here, right now. Not spread thin across centuries of waiting. Concentrated, dense, urgent. 32,356 verses. 51,128 marker connections. 86% coherence across 52 books. A 10-point signal advantage over every major English translation. 378 Dominion Triad convergences spanning the entire canon. This is not a library. This is a neural corpus. A living, interconnected, mathematically verifiable unified signal transmitted across 1,000 years of human history by a single divine intelligence. And the evidence says it is near, even at the doorsteps. This is Dallas James, Hearts2Fathers Publishing, Royal Levitical Priesthood. May the blessing of YHWH Elohim be upon you.